Well, good afternoon, everybody. Whoa. Good afternoon, and welcome to the State of the City Address. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your days to be here. I believe in my decades here at the city, this is the first time we've ever done the State of the City outside of the City Commission room, and I just want to applaud Mayor Cunningham for making that decision to open up, to make a larger city hall. My name is Chuck Wynn. I'm the acting city manager here, and I have the pleasure of introducing Mayor Terry Cunningham to you in a few short moments. Before I do, however, I wanted to quickly go over how this event will run. First, we'll hear the State of the City speech by Mayor Cunningham. Then we'll have a question and answer period, followed by some time out in the lobby to chat with Mayor Cunningham. You might have received a blue card as you walked in here. If you haven't, raise up your hand and we'll get you one. Those are how we're going to collect the questions for the Q&A period after the mayor's address. We'll collect them. Please pass them to the aisle. We'll collect them and we'll bring them up to the mayor to answer. Also, if you want to hear this again, or if you know somebody who would like to hear from the mayor directly, we're going to have a second event this Wednesday, 6 p.m. at Bozeman Fire Station 3 on the west side of town by the regional park. And without further ado, let's welcome Mayor Terry Cunningham to the stage.
Thanks so much, and again, thank you for coming. It's a beautiful day out there, and you've come here. Why have you come here? Because you love this city. You care about its future, and I care about this city's future as well. I've been here for 26 years. My wife's family has owned property in Gallatin County since the 70s, and we are all we all care about the city, and I appreciate you showing up. I also want to say a special thank you to the City of Bozeman staff, the 500 strong people who plow our roads, police our streets, come when there's fire, when potholes need to be replaced, finance department, etc. It's been a bit of a challenging time in the city over the last couple of months, but through strong leadership and a commitment to their jobs, we have continue to provide a high level of service. And I just wanted to thank all members of city staff for doing that. We lost a bright light in our community. Iho Pomeroy was the first immigrant to serve on the city commission, the first person of color to serve on the city commission, but it was her generous heart, her wonderful spirit that we are grieving along with her family, and it's she that we will miss. Oftentimes, we do a land acknowledgement at the beginning of an address like this, but after spending time with Shane Doyle and talking about the culture of the inhabitants, the indigenous inhabitants of this region, I wanted to do more of a cultural acknowledgement, and I found this online and thought it spoke heavily and powerfully about the indigenous people and their philosophy in this valley. Quote, Native Americans possess a unique understanding of the interconnectedness of all living beings and the environment. They view nature as a web of relationships in which every element has a crucial role. This holistic approach to land and resources implies a deep respect for the earth and its systems, emphasizing sustainability over exploitation. We can emulate this mindset by recognizing our dependence on the environment and implementing sustainable practices that prioritize the long-term health of ecosystems. In certain cases, we meet this mark. In certain cases, we fall short, but we try. The sources of information for this presentation, some of them come from our city plans, from our city departments. Some of them have been graciously provided by third parties. I have asked for specific comments and have received additional city comments from folks about some of the hot button issues. I've condensed and edited them to 100 words, and I'll be reading some of those as well. And I will be asking those community members if they're comfortable with me sharing the entirety of their input and we'll find that on agenda@bozeman.net because they were gracious enough to share it with me. For time, I edited it down to 100 words, and I want to make sure that everyone gets the full benefit of that. We'll have a Q&A session, as mentioned, and we'll be meeting out in the lobby as well. Commissioner Magic has joined us here, and she will be out in the lobby as well. And one thing I want to emphasize, I am just one member of a 5-person commission, and so some of the things that I'll be talking about this afternoon are my opinions and don't want to speak on behalf of the commission. So please keep that in mind as we move through here. What is the state of the city? In my view, it is a dynamic city. It is a city that is evolving. The city that we saw in 1975 is different than the city we see in 2000 and different than the city we will see in 2025. The city is apprehensive, worried about some of the things that we're seeing, concerned about some of the growth, but that apprehension can take different forms depending upon who you're talking to. And the city is engaged. We're seeing more folks forming groups, more folks showing up at City Hall, more folks commenting through agenda@bozeman.net, and that's a healthy thing for our community. The fact that you all took time to come this afternoon is a healthy thing for our community. We've seen some of the growth charts. This is Gallatin County, projected to double in size in the next 20 years. To put that into perspective, someone who is born up at Bozeman Deaconess today, by the time she gets her master's degree from MSU, the county will have doubled in size. So that's a staggering statistic. You should know that the city does not have a marketing budget saying, please move to Gallatin County. We do not apply for top 10 lists, etc. Growth is something that happens to us, and we must manage it in some way. This is from the Department of Commerce, and this is a growth chart of the largest counties, and this is an index. You do not have to guess which one is Gallatin County. It's the one in orange. So growth is very much part of the conversation that we have every day at the city, and growth is very much part of the comments that we received as well. What is driving growth? Why are people moving here? Why are we growing in population? 25% of our population comes from natural growth. That's parents having children. We have these wonderful recreational and natural amenities that people move here for. MSU is a contributing part of that dynamic as well, with more students, more professors, more faculty, etc. And when folks graduate, they often want to stick around here in our community. Also, in terms of economic growth, this is another staggering statistic that our county accounts for 32% of all the new jobs created in Montana in the past decade. We have become a retirement mecca, and COVID has exploded our growth through work from home features as well. And I would just ask you, as you're considering what could change in terms of growth, what among these things are likely to change? And the answer is not many of them. So what are the challenges associated with growth? What are the things that we are concerned about? One is, how do we maintain the character of this community called Bozeman? How do we provide the infrastructure? Impact fees only cover certain elements, only pay for certain elements, fire equipment, streets, water, wastewater, etc. They don't cover parks. They don't cover libraries. They don't cover infrastructure like policing our streets and our community. We also have to recognize we have finite resources. What is the impact that we have on our overall ecosystem? What is the tax burden of adding new facilities because of growth or replacing old facilities? And importantly, how do we maintain community cohesiveness in the face of growth? Growth has not taken the city of Bozeman by surprise. Growth is a factor in all of our major plans, from our growth plan to our integrated water resources plan to our climate action plan. And so we factor growth into those plans and into those decisions, policy decisions. Do we have work to do? Do we want community input in deciding how to guide those? Absolutely. And so I believe we need to have this community conversation about growth, that we need to develop a set of shared understandings. We have to be working with the same data. We have to provide, as a city, all of that information to the public so that we can have this informed conversation. We can describe some of the strategies in our community plan, and there are many in there, and then get feedback on what elements of the community plan should we be emphasizing as we move forward. Are there elements that are not in the community plan that we should be discussing? We need to have this community conversation about growth, because in the ideal world, everyone in this room would be able to say, I was involved in that conversation, my voice was heard, and I believe that I was part of the discussion and decisions that come about because of growth. Let's move to housing. Again, this is public input edited down to 100 words. And the first, I asked the Jelinskis, Jane and Jack, if they could comment on the general topic of housing and on growth. And so they report, Bozeman residents were shocked at the precipitous nature of the development of the UDC that involved developers and the Frontier Institute, but excluded homeowners, the public. The plan to replace R1, R2, R3 zoning will negatively affect property values in all of these residential zones and the historic neighborhoods which lose their identities. Even the consultants were surprised at the density of the UDC plan. To rebuild public trust, you must restart the entire process. The Commission has another 2 years to get it right. The public does not need to be educated about the UDC. They've studied it and rejected it. A different point of view comes from Nathan Stein, who says, the majority of people in Bozeman want to live where everyone is welcome and has an opportunity to succeed. When so many are struggling to live in our community with security and dignity, maintaining the status quo is not an option. Bozeman needs more homes of all shapes and sizes for all of our neighbors. We have the ability to take real steps in tackling Bozeman's housing shortage by bringing our UDC into alignment with the urgent needs of our community. Bozeman's housing shortage is a shared responsibility, and every neighborhood has a role to play in growing to meet the needs of the moment. In the next few months, folks from across our city can come together to open their minds to good ideas that seek to build a more inclusive and welcoming Bozeman. Again, some of the public comments that I've asked folks specifically to share with the community. These are numbers that anyone in this room is familiar with. Single-family housing on the left increasing 114% in 7 years, and condos and townhomes increasing similar amount over the same period of time. And I would ask you to imagine yourself as a police person, firefighter, teacher, x-ray technician, anyone who is being recruited to this community or considering moving to this community. Or if you did not have a current home and were interested in moving to Bozeman, how would you deal with these numbers? And what decisions would you have to make as a result of our current housing market? Rental rates are on the rise as well. And 60% of Bozeman residents are renters. This is a bit of a confusing, a busy slide, but it talks about the impact of housing costs. And 50% of all of our renters spend more than 30% of their household income on housing. 24% of our homeowners spend more than the HUD recommended 30% of their household income on housing. You can see in terms of the graphs that wages have not kept up with rental inflation and housing inflation, and in terms of future needs identified in our Community Housing Action Plan, somewhere up to 6,300 units are needed in the community just to keep up with the economic growth that's being forecast. I liken our housing market to a game of musical chairs. Now imagine that there are more people vying for the chairs, and you have to pay for the chairs. The pandemic has supercharged an already tight market, and in terms of home ownership and rental. And who would lose? Who would be left without chair if that were the case. Obviously, the bottom falling out of our market created more homeless folks and urban campers. Our workforce is struggling to stay here. Young families cannot find a place to have their first home, and our seniors are feeling the pinch as well. So what's the solution to that? It's building, I believe, the right houses in the right places. We need to continue to build back our stock of affordable housing. That's among the most difficult to bring out of the ground because of land, labor, lumber, and lending costs. And we have to focus on that because that segment of the market, the housing market, is the most difficult one to bring back. We have to respect and preserve our neighborhood character, emphasize only incremental, thoughtful, and appropriate density in our existing neighborhoods. When we talk about new neighborhoods, we have to look at the natural features and how we work around those. The bottom line is to incentivize the type of housing that we actually need as a community. The commission, relative to affordable housing, again, that's the most difficult housing to bring out of the ground because it doesn't often pencil. So we have created a new affordable housing ordinance that rewards deed-restricted long-term affordability with some density bonuses. We have created a new planned development zone that incentivizes affordable housing. We've worked to unlock some land for affordable housing with ARPA funds. We have instituted short-term rental restrictions. We've increased the amount of money that we spend to incentivize housing in our community housing fund, as well as the Gallatin Housing Impact Fund. We're partnering with the Rest Home property with the county to help them generate affordable housing and childcare. We have dedicated the sale of Fire Station 1 to generate workforce housing, and we're working with developers to bring low-income housing tax credit projects out of the ground, and we have seen some successes, including the project behind Lowe's, which is the largest affordable housing project we've seen, along with childcare, along with low-income medical care as well. And between Willow Springs and Bridgerview, we've seen community land trust projects for ownership come out of the ground as well. What's in the pipeline? As many as 1,200 units that are affordable and deed restricted to different levels of area median income. So we are making some progress when it comes to affordable housing. We also need to think about new neighborhoods that are coming out of the ground. How would they be developed? We are, as a commission, encouraging a variety of housing styles from single family to townhomes to row houses to multifamily in the same neighborhood where there's community commercial, where you can bike and walk to the things that you need, that respects the elements that are there, the natural elements that connect people as neighbors and allows them to recreate with one another. Let's turn our attention to the unhoused or urban camping. Roger Blank, I asked him to provide some comment, and he says and reports, I've seen garbage such as motor oil containers, gasoline containers, broken bottles of alcohol, beer cans, broken lounge chairs, discarded mattresses, and even vehicle tires discarded by the occupants of the campers in the undeveloped lot directly in front of my home, as well as in the street and the wetlands that are across from my apartment. I've even seen campers set up gym weightlifting equipment in the roadway. I've seen campers discard toxic liquids such as used motor oil, antifreeze, as well as their campers' bodily waste tanks into the storm drains that feed directly into the wetlands. And looking at a presentation by a coalition of local nonprofits dealing with the urban camping issue, they say in this presentation, the underlying cause of America's housing and homelessness crisis is the severe shortage of homes affordable to people with lowest incomes and a widening gap between incomes and housing costs. The solution to homelessness is straightforward: housing. By connecting people experiencing homelessness to housing and services, they have a platform from which they can address other areas that may have contributed to their homelessness, like employment, health, substance abuse. Solutions include transitional housing, supportive housing, mental health and addiction services, and investing in low-income housing. So this is a chart showing the number of unhoused people in Montana. Billings is over on the far left. Missoula is on the far right. Bozeman is the second from the left, and it's equal to Kalispell as well. This is just to illustrate that this is not only a nationwide problem, but a problem in Montana. And Montana is one of the fastest growing states when it comes to people being homeless or unhoused. There's some data from HRDC. They're comparing 2019 to 2022, sort of in the middle of sort of COVID and the after effects of COVID, and you're seeing the number of unhoused people. And again, the numbers vary depending upon who's counting and where they're counting, but generally increasing over that 3-year period by roughly 50%, regardless of age, ethnicity, whether or not there's a mental health issue, substance abuse issue, depression, physical disability as well, that across the board, those numbers are going up. How do we deal with it? Well, we have to deal with it head on, in my view. There are, depending upon who's counting and where they are, somewhere between 250 and 375 unhoused individuals. We can solve this problem. One couple of things that we have done, and these are Band-Aids, if you will, is to hire neighborhood service officers to make sure that some of the things that Mr. Blank was reporting are not happening, that our public health and safety is maintained, and we've instituted time, place, and manner restrictions to say you can't be in front of a child care place, a school, a business, etc. But that's not the solution. I believe that working with the Regional Housing Coalition, which is supported by One Valley and involves all of the decision makers being at the table, is where we should find these solutions, and the meetings are starting to take place already. And so we need to participate actively in those solutions. Also, HRDC's Homeward Point shelter will open in 2025. What they're saying, though, is that in order to bridge RV camping and permanent housing, we need transitional housing. That could involve the purchase of a hotel, motel. We also need more elements like the Housing First Village, which is on the bottom right of the slide, where you provide wraparound services to people to address the underlying issues of homelessness. Further, we need to have more mental health and addiction resources in the community in order to deal with this issue. Water. Daniel Carty has provided us with public input here, along with some of his colleagues, and it says, during the next decade, one of the most formidable challenges will be to ensure that its finite water supply is not exceeded by the demands placed on it by residential and commercial developments. Water conservation measures outlined in the city's Water Conservation and Efficiency Plan can help in this regard. However, a bold step would be to immediately eliminate cash in lieu of water rights from the UDC and adopt a water-neutral growth policy. Ultimately, Bozeman's finite water supply will dictate the carrying capacity of its human population, and as such, the city should start planning for that eventuality sooner rather than later. So let's talk a bit about water. Our supply comes from surface water, from Lyman, from Sourdough, and from the Highlight Creeks. Those water supplies are subject to climate change, snowpack melt, etc., and our integrated water resource plan, which we developed, says that 50% of our future water supply should come from conservation. The remaining 50% is looking at new water supply sources. I should have put the next one in bright red bold and have it blink, and that is that 50% of our residential water consumption happens during 3 months, and it happens on the watering of lawns. And if we can address that issue, and we have attempted to address that issue, I'll show what we've done in the future, that would go a long way to meeting our long-term needs. And our capital improvement plan does call for some projects to work on storage that happen in the Sourdough Basin and the Highlight Creek area as well. So what has the commission been doing about water? So a number of things, mostly in the area of conservation. We've implemented mandatory water restrictions. We've had a drought management plan. We've had a pricing schedule that encourages conservation. We've adapted model HOA covenants, water conservation plan, planned development zone incentives for water conservation, one of which we'll be looking at tomorrow night. UDC proposals that incentivize landscaping and irrigation best practices. We've taken a regional approach to looking at water supply with our neighbors and municipalities, and we're looking at water storage options from Highlight and Bozeman Creek as well. We do note that our water conservation efforts have reduced our per capita water supply by 22% in 2016. Well, we need to have a community conversation about supply and about water resources. And so I would encourage you to be active in those conversations as we move forward. In terms of public safety, asked our fire chief, Josh Waldo, for the latest data. We have 53 employees in the fire department, 45 of them are assigned to trucks. They went on 4,200 calls for service in 2023. One of the things that we are keeping an eye on is that the vendor used for EMS, for ambulance services, is not able to meet the needs that we believe they should be meeting, and so we are sending out ambulances with our teams to deal with EMS calls, and we're going to have to be dealing with that issue and coming to some solutions in the future. Fire station number 2 is a great partnership with MSU, and that'll be opening in August 2024, and Chief Waldo wanted me to emphasize, yes, the doors will not be red, they will be Bobcat blue. Our fire master plan, in order to make sure that we are meeting our response goals, calls for a 4th fire station, and we're targeting that for 2027. We also need quick response vehicles to go after medical calls. Bringing a large fire apparatus is not the most efficient way to do that, but we need the staffing for that as well. And they are working on international accreditation, which would be a huge step for us and for the state of Montana. I asked Chief Veldkamp, or actually Chuck Wynn asked Chief Veldkamp what's happening in our police department. So we added last year, as part of this current year's budget, 5 additional sworn officers, which brings that to 72 officers. But we are facing challenges in terms of hiring and retention. Part of that is the cost of living here in Bozeman, the inability to purchase a home, and Chief Veldkamp reports that most of the police officers who have a home are Three Forks or beyond. The negative perceptions of law enforcement, or the recent perceptions of law enforcement, playing a role, and the challenges of this very difficult job in terms of trauma, lawsuits, danger associated with it as well. Cases, that means when an actual written report is made, have increased by about 1,000 over a 1-year period, and felony cases have almost doubled. So we are seeing more fentanyl-related cases, more violent cases, and they've doubled in the 7-year period. Still, Bozeman is still the safest, largest community in Montana based on 2022 data. Chief Veldkamp wanted to point out 2 things. One is that our officers are very busy in the community, and we are going on more calls for services than other cities with similar populations that have an even higher crime rate. We are a busy community when it comes to Bozeman Police, and Chief Veldkamp says we have the highest quality officers in the state, and Rick Gale will probably back that up, one of our police commissioners as well. When it comes to sustainability or climate, I reached out and got the following from Eva Molina, who's 23 years old. Quote, "I've grown up into adulthood knowing I'm inheriting an unhealthy earth. The regular discussion of what do I want to do with my life seems ridiculous faced with warming winters, thin snowpack, and the promise of an intoxicating fire season. I now know, as a member of the Gallatin Valley Sunrise, that local action is as important as ever. My generation is burdened with the effects of choices we did not make. We must reject the status quo thinking and push for solutions in our community like walk and bikeability, energy efficient, resilient buildings, local food systems, solar, wind power. Right now, we need our local governments to fight for us, which means acting creatively to save a healthy environment. Some of the news associated with what we've been doing in terms of sustainability, we do have, as a community, the most aggressive climate goals of any community in Montana. We are working with City of Missoula, County of Missoula, Northwestern Energy in developing a 50 megawatt facility of clean energy that we can purchase and other communities can purchase that will allow us to meet our goals of having 100% net renewable electricity by 2030. And that's going to be going, we hope, before the Public Service Commission in relatively short order. We have been adding solar arrays to our city facilities. Just last year, we saved $28,500 on the Public Safety Center electricity bills as a result of what we've done there. And at Fire Station 2, we're adding a 50 kilowatt array of solar there as well. And we're looking at other city facilities that we can add solar to. We have added electric vehicles to the fleet. The most recent one is a Ford Lightning. And there may be a Ford Lightning somewhere in the neighborhood. John Vanderlinder said he would bring it, and so you can take a look at that, and I'm hoping that that's the case. We've adopted our sensitive lands plan, we have a heat pump program, and we are enacting solutions from our climate plan that has over 75 solutions to reduce our CO2 emissions. Now let's talk about sensitive lands. There's two quotes here. One comes from the Bozeman Tree Coalition. Quote, residents are concerned the city of Bozeman is not taking steps to protect trees during development despite existing plans and codes designed to protect them. Trees planted to replace cut ones need decades to provide the level of ecosystem services the mature trees once provided. Older trees sequester and store more carbon as well as offer more shade than younger trees. Bozeman's urban forest is a vital public-private asset that yields abundant ecological, economic, and health-related benefits, and with those benefits comes the responsibility to protect it. Existing trees should remain standing and celebrated, especially for new housing projects. We can do just that with the UDC update. And from Clint Nagel of the Mountain Wildlife Association, increased growth has and will continue to threaten the character of Bozeman. But that same growth has and will continue to also place pressure on the ecological integrity and diversity throughout the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, especially those sensitive lands here in Gallatin County. The more growth the city and outlying communities experience, the more impact there will be upon our areas of wildlife habitat, riparian areas, water resources, and sensitive lands. Climate change, habitat fragmentation, and the persistent human intrusions into our surrounding wildlands have and are affecting our natural world. To prevent an unconscionable loss of wildness, we must protect our sensitive lands for wildlife and honor that protection. What is the city doing in the area of sensitive lands? We have created and adopted a sensitive lands protection plan, and I can't emphasize this enough in terms of its impact and the scale of what we were able to accomplish. Federal, state, local agencies and governments participated in this, as well as numerous environmental nonprofits. So we now have an accessible database of when it comes to soil, when it comes to wildlife crossings, when it comes to riparian areas and sensitive areas as well. We now have the tools at our disposal to make decisions as policymakers about development in these areas. Also, we have committed as a commission that even though the Supreme Court has narrowly defined what the waters of the U.S. are, we as a commission are going to protect the broader sense of wetlands beyond what the waters of the U.S. defined. We're working with Sacagawea Audubon Society so that they can create a wetland mitigation bank so we don't export our mitigated wetlands out of our watershed. We have worked with MSU and DEQ at our water reclamation facility to add wetlands as part of the treatment program for reducing our nitrogen and other nutrients in that area before it goes back into Gallatin Creek, East Gallatin. We also have bundled together our trash recycling and composting program. We got a grant for $1.6 million to get that composting program out of the ground. Compost is among the most methane-rich things we put in our landfill, and taking it out would be a big bonus. We also have removed 94 tons of sediment before it reaches area creeks and rivers. And we have worked with the Gallatin Watershed Council to create something called Branch Out Bozeman, which identifies areas that need more canopy, and we can add to our urban canopy as well. Do we need to do more? Of course we do. Now, in the area of the economy, we know that housing is a big issue when it comes to recruiting employees and retaining employees. So Sarah Anders, who's here today, the executive director of the Southwest Montana Manufacturing Partnership, provided a quote relative to that. And she says, the challenges arise in retaining experienced staff and attracting new highly skilled employees due to housing issues. There are examples of companies extending offers to talented, qualified candidates only for them to decline due to the inability to find suitable housing for themselves and their families. Many of these individuals are seeking housing for small or growing families and aren't willing to compromise quality of living for apartment or high-density complex housing. Subsequently, many manufacturing career seekers continue their search elsewhere, further straining workforce recruitment and retention in the Bozeman manufacturing community, and many other sectors could report that as well. We have seen articles about teachers and bus drivers. We're having that problem ourselves. Bozeman Fire, at one point, the last 4 people that we hired were not in our county. They are coming in from other counties. So relative to our economy, downtown Bozeman continues to thrive. We have a very low unemployment rate. And again, we as a county generate almost 32% of all the new jobs in the state of Montana. Aurora is building a 78,000 square foot facility on the MSU Innovation Campus that is related to self-driving cars and other vehicles. And photonics and biomed are big growth industries here in Bozeman. But again, local employers are reporting significant challenges associated with housing. A restaurant owner reporting that their staff, members of their staff, spend the night in trailheads up at Highlight, find a gym membership that is cheap so that they can take a shower and then come to service at the restaurant. So we recognize that this is still a big issue. Transportation and streets, the big news there is that once we reached 50,000 in terms of population, we're required to create what's called a metropolitan planning organization. So we have met with our partners, including Streamline and DOT in Gallatin County and Belgrade, and we have created governing boards and steering committees to develop a region-wide transportation plan. Also, you voted to create an urban transportation district. That has been created and is being peopled as we speak, so that transit and other forms of recreation can be included into our plans as well. We piloted a bicycle boulevard from MSU down to downtown that emphasized bicycle recreation, and we created a Snow Angels program for folks who are having difficulty getting snow shoveled on their walkway, that volunteers will show up and do that for them. Recreation and parks, we created a parks, recreation, and active transportation plan. We review those every 10 years, and this was especially robust engagement, including engagement from folks that we don't typically hear from, because we reached out to them as well. We made improvements to the swim center. We helped with GVLT, adding 12 acres to Burke Park. We work with Eagle Mount to include and improve accessibility at our summer camps, so we can see more people, especially those with disabilities, being active participants in our summer camp. And we created the Story Mill Community Center studio. We were losing dance studios and arts and cultural programs in our community, and so this is helping to replace those. Other newsworthy items: we are the first Montana community to have a DEI plan that has actual next steps in it. and the Belonging in Bozeman plan has been passed. We also increased our funding for community support programs, established a mobile crisis response program, the library, finished renovations with hardly any tax dollars whatsoever due to the generous donation of people in the community. We had our first city-sponsored fireworks show, and we received a lot of grants, including $24 million for the Keiki expansion, as well as drug court, safe streets, historic preservation, and helping to fight child exploitation and human trafficking as well. So we met as a commission in January and outlined and narrowed down some priorities that the commission wanted to see us move forward in the next 2 years. We are asking city staff to evaluate those and determine which of these might be able to be enacted given current capacity and how we could move through these. So these are proposed at this time, and we're going to be working with staff to narrow these down, or perhaps take a look at what's involved in them and see if we can enact some of the elements of these. First, building public trust, support and pride in your local government. This is one aspect of doing that, but we have work to do where that is concerned, and we recognize that. Strengthening our historic preservation policies, including trees and landmarks, adopting a comprehensive plan for the unhoused, which I mentioned earlier, incentivizing accessory dwelling units, developing an affordable housing preservation policy, making sure that we hang on to those affordable housing units that we have already, developing a master plan for Bozeman Creek, our namesake creek, and developing a tenant right to counsel program, ramping up our bike and ped program so we can move from silver to gold, and implement at least 8 of the recommendations that we find in our multifaceted Belonging in Bozeman plan. And again, we are in discussion with city staff to see which of these we might be able to accomplish. So in addition to housing and growth and climate, and all of the things that have been identified in terms of priorities, I wanted to add a couple of priorities of my own, recognizing that many of the priorities I share with my fellow commissioners as well. One is to fast track our veterans cemetery. We have relatives who have the remains of veterans looking for a place to respectfully bury them. In our last plan, our capital improvement plan, we fast-tracked the building of the first 240 slot mausoleum. And so we're going to be fast-tracking that, and we need to apply for official Veterans Cemetery designation, and we continue to partner with the American Legion on this project. I believe that we should have our sensitive lands plan not collect a bit of dust. So I'm going to be suggesting as an agenda item that we work with the county, who has already approved this, and Western Transportation Institute, who has funding, to do an analysis so that we can create wildlife crossings under I-90 or over I-90, connecting the Bridger Range and the Gallatin Range, which will reduce collisions and increase connectivity. I also would like to have a master plan developed for Bozeman Creek. You saw that as one of the items that we're asking the city to evaluate, and that involves daylighting the creek wherever possible, preparing and evaluating, could that creek handle a 100-year flood, improving water quality, and looking at our setback restrictions as well. But no matter what we do as a city, how we do it is as important as what we do. I believe in collaboration. We should be collaborating with all of our fellow municipalities and our county. We should have joint commission meetings and work on planning on a regional basis. I also believe that MSU has tremendous talent and resources that we should be taking advantage of here in the city. I'd like to meet with their student senate to find out what are the things that are worrying them the most. And also work with our local school district and MSU on their future land use needs. This is, I think, one of the most important slides here, and that is that we all need to be able to engage with one another in a productive, responsible manner, and the commission has a big role in that. We need to make sure that everyone feels welcome at the table, everyone is actually at the table, that we have a set of shared understandings that we can reach, that we can demystify the process and be more transparent about how things happen on the commission. How do we plan our future? That's the key, right? I believe the way we do it is we find common ground across our community. We plan together so that everyone in this room and everyone outside this room can say, I know where we're going, I saw the plan, I participated in the plan, and I had a voice in that plan. So that is the presentation, and wanted to see if Janae has been looking through the questions and can hand me some of those. Thank you. So first question is, Bozeman needs a community recreation center. Attempts to create one failed in 2012 and 2023. Is the city planning to revisit this issue? So we as a commission, and it was the previous commission, decided that we were not going to place it, it's the current commission, we're not going to place it on the upcoming June ballot. So we did a lot of work in trying to determine what is needed in the community, what it would cost. We worked with an MOU with the school district on a parcel near the new Gallatin High School, and we were going to move forward with that. I'm sorry, it was the previous commission, because when we received the notices of property tax and value increases, we didn't believe as a commission at that time that people could make an informed decision about whether or not they wanted to add more property taxes to their property tax assessment until they actually knew what their new assessments were going to be. And so we decided we're going to put a halt on that community center vote that was going to happen in June, and consider it for the future. There's a new commission. There are 2 new commissioners in the role, and we've not had a formal discussion or decision about the community center. I can tell you from my point of view, what I would like to see is more private philanthropic support in order to bring that to the public. I believe that there is capacity in this community to help pay down something like that, so that when we go to voters, it's not that huge number that we were looking at before. But we have not had that discussion. We have 2 new commissioners, Deputy Mayor Joey Morrison and Douglas Fisher, who have not been asked about that. And so that's something that we need to tackle in the future. Yeah, so what will the city do to protect the historical character and sense of place of the downtown core? So one of the elements that we had as a community priority, and we have funding, one of the grants that we received is for historic preservation. And so we have identified that as a commission as something that we want to talk about. We have the NCOD, which provides some protection for historic neighborhoods as well. We have a historic preservation advisory board as well, and that is one of the things that will be happening sort of either as part of the UDC or separate from the UDC as well. We have one of the most active, thriving downtowns. We have historic and core neighborhoods that support that downtown, and have houses and neighborhoods that are part of the thread and the fabric of Bozeman. So it is on our list of things that we want to address and as a commission priority as well. What form that will actually take is how we have this interaction between the commission and city staff as to what we can reasonably achieve in the next 2 years, but I can assure you it is on the mind of myself and my colleagues. If impact fees are not covering the cost of development, that means that existing residents are subsidizing developers, either through higher taxes or declining services. Why can't impact fees be raised to cover the full cost of development? Great question. So there's a formula and a process of impact fees. To date, it only covers water, sewer, fire equipment, and streets. In order to increase that to other services, we would have to get new legislation, because the legislation and the policies that we have are prescriptive of what they could, what they can, and what they can't cover. So we revisit impact fees on a regular basis, and we're in the process of revisiting impact fees as well. And so what we have to do is say, what is the proportional increase of that road, of the impact on sewer and water that new development accounts for, and what is the cost of delivering that? Now, cost is an ever-increasing thing. We have we put out projects for bid all the time, and there are times when we say we have not received a reasonable bid, and we have to either put that project off, bundle it with other projects, etc., and find a creative way to get those done. So costs increase, and I would imagine that our discussion about impact fees and how much we should charge has to take into consideration the actual cost of construction. But we have a formula that we've agreed to, and we are scrutinized heavily on that cost and that percentage as well. And so that's the plan, is we need to make sure that if we're going to increase that there's got to be a solid reason for the impact that it has on the community. The snowfall was low this year. It's already melting. Water availability is a huge issue. Growth is putting pressure on our own water supply. Putting brakes on new subdivisions can help control this. How will the city deal with this? We are, again, looking at two things. How do we reduce our water use? How do we find new supply in a reasonable way? I can tell you that the most efficient units are likely the units that are the recent developments and future developments, because they are complying with a code that is stricter, especially if we get the UDC improvements, etc. But in terms of building codes and incentives, those are likely the most water efficient buildings that we will have. We tend to have higher density developments, which means that if there are 100 people in an apartment complex, that's a much less water use than if those 100 people were in single-family homes. Our largest source of water use are homes that have been built in the last 30 years that have irrigation systems. That's where we're seeing most of the use. That's where we're seeing most of the water being used in this 3-month period of time. So as we look into the future and we look at how we can push our water use into the future, can we have, does this valley have the carrying capacity to add more residents? Absolutely has to be part of that equation. Whether or not new developments add incrementally to that is something we must consider as well. So that's a great question, and that's something that we have to answer as a commission, but we want your input on that as well as we tackle the issue of water, which we recognize is a big issue in Bozeman. When speaking of drivers of growth, it seems you missed the real estate tourism industry. which do actively market this city and its amenities. Was there a particular reason why they are not listed? I apologize if I missed that there are Tourism Bureau that have marketing campaigns talking about Bozeman. I've also noticed that they have switched a lot of their funds to take care of Bozeman. We are of the opinion that the fees that are generated in order to address those tourism issues, that fund those tourism programs, could be used in other ways as well. And in terms of real estate, if marketing campaigns for real estate, if that brings folks in and who would not otherwise be considering, then I apologize for missing that from those lists. You mentioned rebuilding public trust. What would you say has contributed to a lack of trust, and what can the City Commission to do better to build a sense of trust? So it's been my experience over a 6-year period that, especially when it comes to many of our plans, so whether that's the transportation plan or the community plan, we have sort of a set way of going about and engaging with people. And we get engagement and we check that box and we say, okay, the public has been engaged, and we have work sessions in the commission relative to those plans. And then when we launch those plans, there are times, or when something happens and it refers back to the plan, people might say, I wasn't aware of that. And you say, oh, but we had all of these opportunities. We had a work session. We had these outreach opportunities. And I think what we need to do is, and we're doing this now, is evaluating how do we reformat this dialogue between the commission and the community when it comes to how do we engage. And I think what we're seeing and we're hearing as a result of the surveys is you all would prefer for those decisions to be discussed outside of the commission room, that we could come to neighborhoods and have meetings with neighborhood associations, that we could find ways of having community dialogues about those, that we need to be more inventive about the way that we discuss these issues as well. If it's a development issue, then we are encouraging more neighbors to get involved with the developers, and the developers getting more involved with the neighbors, because we've seen time and time again that a better product is produced when that happens. So in terms of trust, getting the opportunity to have people say, I saw that, I had the opportunity to participate in that, and I was part of that discussion, will go a long way towards building the trust between the commission and the residents. What can be done to improve the bikeability of Bozeman? Great question. So we have a Complete Streets program, and that Complete Streets program says when improvements are made to streets or when new streets are developed, that bikeability and walkability have to be part of that. So when we see streets improved, when we see streets developed, they have to comply with those policies, those complete street policies. But as a result, because there are areas where development has happened, the street has been improved, development has happened down the road, street is improved, but there's a gap between those. That creates a gap in our bike network. So being able to identify where those crucial gaps are and how we fill them is important. We would prefer that it be improved. Again, how do we get developers to pay for things? Is they pay for the streets, they pay for the bicycle networks, they pay for the sidewalks, etc. But we don't have an application should we be looking at ourselves going and filling that gap? And we've done that on 19th, and we've done that in other areas. So it's how do we prioritize filling those gaps is one of the things. Number two is I'm a big believer in bicycle boulevards, in how do you get around town in an area where you're likely to encounter less cars, and those cars are going at a slower speed. And creating areas of bicycle boulevard, I think will go a long way to that. I'm a nervous bicyclist. I will not go down Wilson for long stretches. I'll try to cut in for the trail system that we have. But if there were a bicycle boulevard where I knew I had the priority over cars, that would make me feel a lot better about taking more trips and on my bike as well. The other thing that we need to do is recognize that during the winter, we need to be taking care of bicycle lanes as well. That when we plow, it's not just moving cars, it's moving bicyclists and making sure that we're addressing pedestrian issues as well. So filling gaps, bicycle boulevards, and making it more of a year-round experience are part of that. But also, we just passed a Pratt plan, which has specific ideas, and we have a capital improvement plan that has specific projects, such as, doing a tunnel under 7th, et cetera. And it's just a matter of finding out what the community wants to prioritize, which of those are currently unfunded, which ones should we move to 2028, 2025, et cetera. So as we're going through the capital improvement plan, that's an opportunity for you all to say, I want more emphasis on connectivity and below-grade connections. Will the city be installing a splash pad at Story Mill Park? The master plan does call for a splash pad at Story Mill Park. We, I believe, have put it out for bid, and we have not received bids for that project. So it is on the plan, and we are looking to do that in a way that saves water as well and is water efficient, but provides some area for kids and adults, et cetera, to splash around at this wonderful 54-acre park. What steps are being taken to enforce the new short-term rental policies to make sure non-compliant rentals are being removed from short-term rental platforms? I am not the expert on this one, but I know that one of our goals is to say, when you list a property, you must have a valid license number associated with that property. I'm not sure where we are in the process. We are hiring a new software system to help us with that. We're communicating with the VRBO, Airbnb, Craigslist vendors to let them know that when we receive complaints about non-compliance, we attempt to investigate those, and that our code compliance department can get involved with that as well. I am not sure where we are, quite frankly, in that process, and so if you'll let me know your name, I can get that information as well. Okay, we've received the last question. Answer the question in the back. Is the city willing to significantly change the draft UDC based on community input? The answer is yes. This is your Unified Development Code. We are going through the process of deciding in what form, in what manner, and when we'll re-engage. I can assure you that that engagement will be robust, respectful, and we want to listen to what you have to say. I'm working with the Deputy Mayor, Joey Morrison, and with city staff to be deliberate about this. In terms of no sudden moves that I talked about before, we need to digest what what we're hearing from the community? What forum allows for the best interaction? How many, can we give more options about the UDC? Can we break it into buckets that are sort of more bite-sized? All of those things are on the front of our minds as well. And so we are very interested in getting the best possible input that we can so that we can make informed decisions about the UDC. And the last question, when will the community be evaluating the city governance structure? What does this process look like? Great question. So every municipality and every county in Bozeman, every 10 years must put before the voters a ballot question which says, do you want to evaluate your local government structure? That ballot question has been approved by the commission and is going to be in the June ballot. So what does that mean? The 1972 Montana Constitution, which I believe is one of the great constitutions in the United States, specifically said, we want every 10 years the citizens, not the commission, not the mayor, not the staff, to decide what does this government structure look like moving forward. And that could be, so the process is, it's on the ballot, and then in June, you will say, yes, I want to appoint a local government study commission to do that, or no, I don't. And the reason for not would theoretically be, hey, everything is just hunky-dory. I'm fine with, sorry, did I just use hunky-dory? I apologize for that. Moving forward. So what does that mean? And then if you say, yes, we want to study the structure of our local government, people will actually run. They will put their name up for consideration to be part of that study commission. No commissioners, no city commissioners will be part of that. That's part of the statute. And so those people, and we've identified that there will be 5 people, that they will be allocated a mill, which is $230,000 to do all their work, to put it on the ballot, to have all their meetings, etc. And so they will be evaluating a variety of things. That could be, the mayor, deputy mayor structure. You vote for a mayor and then mayor, deputy mayor for 2 years. It could be, how many people do you want on the city commission? It could be, do you want wards where there are 5 or 7 different wards, etc. There are models out there where, for instance, Billings has, I think, 7 wards. Don't hold me to that as well. So there's local representation. There's the notion of city manager form of government, strong mayor form of government, etc. Are possible to be looked at. And then that study commission, after looking at all of those options, will make a recommendation, and then that will come back to the voters as well. You'll be able to vote on whether or not the recommendation from that study commission is something that you want to enact. So that's the process. Again, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day, especially on a day like today, to come into a dark auditorium and share your thoughts via comment cards and questions, but also to just show up. And we really appreciate that, and I look forward to chatting with you in the lobby. So thank you.